All right, it is time for another really exciting video related to AWS. And today we're covering RDS and using MySQL within that specifically. And maybe I should take off these headphones because it's making the audio really weird for me. Okay, I had the noise canceling on and couldn't even hear myself talking. All right, so let's go ahead and push on through. Um, Many people have already touched RDS before, and they've also, as part of maybe a previous lab in my course, used or set up a database program application on an EC2 instance. One of the first things this talks about is that running your own databases on EC2 instances is potentially a really bad thing or a real big pain in the neck for a lot of reasons. So I note down here, you have to do backups. Oh, wait a minute. Let me do a screen share. Then you'll be able to see what I'm pointing at. All right, now we're good. Things like you have to do backups, you have to be able to do recovery, you have to work on your scaling and availability, you have to worry about your storage space, you have to worry about patching your databases for security reasons or for just operational functional reasons. You need to be able to patch the underlying operating system. And depending on whether it's self-hosted or in the cloud, you need to worry about the fact that the hardware that's underlying your database just might fail. And you can ignore all of those problems if you use a managed database. Now, the problem with a managed database like RDS is that you're going to pay more for that. But when it comes between the choice of, hey, do I want to pay somebody like $80,000 a year or more to be an expert on a particular database and make sure it's always backed up and scalable and all that stuff, or just pay like, I don't know, another, 50 bucks a month or something for your database being managed by a provider like AWS. Usually it's cheaper to have somebody like AWS do all of the management of the things that are annoying related to databases. So you need to really have some compelling reasons to not use a managed database and actually run it yourself. And when I say managed, I mean the hyperscaler or the cloud providers are the ones that do the managing of your database for you. And then you just basically put the data in it and then tweak some settings from time to time if you need to tweak them. All right, so that's what this is about using RDS. And in this lab, the idea is to create a VPC in the US East 2 Ohio region. And within the three availability zones there, put in a subnet, and in that subnet, put in two instances. One is one that you're going to run, and that'll just be I have T2 there, but it's actually going to be a T3, I think. I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, you put in a small EC2 free tier instance as proof of concept, and we put a node application on there that can talk to a database. And then we use RDS to have a managed database service so that all the recovery and backups and all that stuff can be managed by somebody other than us. So then presumably, if anything bad were to happen there, AWS fixes it. And if something bad happens over here, well, we have the code and it's pretty easy to redeploy code because it's in our, GitHub repository or something like that. All right, so first thing we're going to do is select a region, and there we are. There we are in Ohio, and we're going to look for RDS, and we click on that. It used to just say RDS, I think. Now it says Aurora and RDS. A little bit of marketing there. They're saying use our Aurora version of databases. And for you, you should have probably zeros in most of the things that are listed here. I've used this service a number of times and deleted things over the years, and so I might have a little bit more than you. There's stuff in there that I've probably forgotten about. One of the things I want to highlight here is that there is a default network or VPC in this region where your stuff will get placed. Now, that's a little bit problematic in the sense that if you use the default, you don't know what things are in there unless you study it really carefully in terms of route tables and maybe other EC2 instances, and how are your subnets configured related to security, and what else can we look at? Security groups, what security groups are available? Are there other EC2 instances running in this network that might be hackable that could interact with your network? You got your route table. When I said interact, I was going to say database. You got your route table in there with traffic rules that may or may not be good. So, and then on top of that, when you use this wizard to create a database in RDS, you don't really know what it added into your default VPC, so you don't know what to delete when you're done using RDS as well. And so for these reasons, I'm going to do something which may be unique to you, which is we're going to create our own VPC and create our application in there. That way we know that everything we're working with is something that is secure and we understand all of it. And when we clean it up, there's not going to be anything left over that we don't want in there. So that's kind of the high level idea. All right, let's go ahead and click on create a database. And we can toggle back and forth between standard create and easy create. Under standard create, we see things like we can have lots of different types of databases that we could use. And we can see that there are quite a number of settings that are possible. And then we could even expand out for additional configuration. There's quite a lot of things that we can set on here, and I'm not going to talk about all of them, although it is interesting that whatever's defaulted here is going to cost $2,000 a month, which is a lot. We can also go over here to easy create, and that's going to limit the options, which makes it a lot nicer. So anyway, less things to think about. So you do more when you understand more. All right, so I'm saying here to initially select easy create, and then under engine options, make sure we're on Aurora, um, MySQL compatible, and then go down under engine options. Oh, sure we can find that. Hold on. There should be a drop down somewhere. Huh. Okay. Oh, well, okay, anyway, let's just look at some of this. I'm looking for something else, but I'm not seeing it right now. But okay, it's suggesting initially to use this dev test, uh, which is a relatively large instance here. And one of the things that I asked you to do is go over to the AWS calculator and look at how much it would cost to run this for a month, and then look how much it would cost to run that for a month. When doing that, let's anyway, AWS calculator. Come here. This is how you would do that. Create estimate, and then we're going to search for RDS, MySQL. Okay, Amazon, RDS. I think I put the exact words you're supposed to search for. Um, Amazon Aurora, MySQL compatible. Okay, so we select the right service. And when looking at this, if we change this option to db.r7g.large, click, and if we change the storage amount to 30 gigabytes, oh, um, we can see the monthly cost is going to be like 245 a month. And so you can do the math for how much that would be per day, but it's not insignificant. And then if you go with the other option is the R7G dot, oh man, I meant to do the other one. All right, let me go fix that. So here's the other one, db dot, oh, I meant to do two, two X large. I think that's what I said, unless I have that later on. Oh, no, no, I already did. Okay, sorry. Cool. This is a problem if you do this recently, then you remember things and then you forget other things. Anyway, so basically there's your estimate and you can just figure out how much that would cost. And then later on in here, I say do that same calculation for the 2x large. So we'll do to X large, and now it's 975 a month. And so if we do equals 975 divided by 31, we can see that's going to cost us about $31 a day if we, coming over here, choose one of their default options, which is fairly expensive. Of course, after I did this part of the tutorial, I realized if you sometimes I think there's a way to see that information down at the bottom. Let's see if I do that one. Okay, so for whatever reason, if I do standard, it'll show me the amount. Let's see if I do dev test mode, it'll be less. So anyway, I just wanted you to get the feel for how you can estimate the costs of running things, and especially for this lab, and especially if you're leaving this on for projects and stuff, you don't want to accidentally spend too much money. So let's go ahead and return to the form. First thing we're gonna do is, let's see if it's still on. I think I still have this on the easy create option. Okay, so okay, I'm gonna close this. So put this back on the easy create option. We've got a database identifier. This is the thing, just like an overall handle or name to identify your databases with. Um, so it can be one instance, it could be a cluster of them. That's how that works. Expand the default options for easy create. And oh, this is what I wanted to see. And I want you to see some reason why we're not going to use the easy create option. So good news is it says, hey, it's going to encrypt our data that's going to be in the database. It says where it's going to put things. It says it's going to put it in the default VPC. Um, it says it's going to do automatic backups. Great. But concerningly, at some point in here, where's the public access? Okay, so public access, no. So what we're saying is if we click create right now, we're going to have a database with a username and password that we can't physically connect to from the internet. So how are we going to put data in there? You have to be pretty good and slick at this stuff to figure out how to populate it without being able to connect to it from the internet. And we're not going to cross that bridge today. Um, One of the things I like to do is just initially make it accessible from the internet, so that way you can put data in it uh, from your from your home, from some little application like MySQL Workbench, or if you're using the Postgres database, if you're using pgadmin. I like to populate the database from my local computer first, interacting with it, and then I lock it up so that there's not outside access, and it'll only talk to an application once the application's in a good enough state that it can read and write to the database. But until then, you got to start somewhere. You got to do like your create table syntax and some of the basics. So what I'm saying is that this stuff is not so good for us. So let's go ahead and switch back to standard create with all of the glorious options there. Now, if I do Aurora, which is a fantastic version of either MySQL or Postgres, um, it's got some great advantages to it, but it doesn't for these tutorials allow us to do, I don't think, like really cheap free tier stuff. So let's do really cheap free tier stuff. Okay, so I'm going to click on MySQL, and that will allow us to do that. And then I come down here under versions, and notice all the different versions of MySQL that you could use. And I'm just noting here that you could do this for all these things. Like let's go Oracle and say, okay, which version of Oracle do I want to use? Okay, lots of versions of Oracle. Postgres. Um, Lots of different versions of Postgres that I could use, back to version 11, more recently version 17. All right, so we're going to use MySQL. I just want you to know that there's lots of options available. I'm sure once you commit to a version, they'll probably come out with another version the next week, and then you're going to be behind. All right, so let's go down here to this portion. So templates just kind of means that, well, it does say use case, but what do we mean by use case? So basically, do you need something that's going to be Distributed, you need like, 714 read copies of your database because you get traffic on the level of a Walmart? Or are you just doing some development to figure this out initially? Or are you a small company? So production ones are going to have configurations with lots of redundancy and lots of instances, and you pay for each one of those at a really high rate. When you're using dev test and free tier, you're getting more to options that allow you to, anyway, just get by cheaper and not support as much traffic, not have as much reliability and redundancy and availability, but it's typically okay when you're just in a development stage, and that's why it says dev or test. Now, they used to just have two options, and I'm going to stick on the dev test option. Like notice like underneath it, it gives you some pictures about what you're about to build. Um, if I click this one, it forces me to go there. If I click this one, it says you can still kind of in dev test select many of the options. I'm going to select this, which is going to be basically the same thing as going free tier. And so what it's saying here is I'm just going to use one instance, basically one EC2 instance that we're calling a database instance. I could go with more, two, I could go with three, but for testing purposes and not spending as much money, I'll just do one. If I do like two or three, what that means is my data could be striped across multiple database servers and it all gets synced up, which is beautiful. But we get the exact from an application perspective and a testing perspective, there's functionally no difference when we're developing whether we have one instance or many. It's just when users are using it, um, if you have like let's just say hundreds of thousands of people hitting your infrastructure at once, and if one of your zones goes down, then having like a multi-availability zone setup means that the load balancing will send all of the traffic, like your read traffic, for example, to other instances that are still available and up, and then it will automatically rebuild the instance that either disappeared or restore access when the other availability zone comes back up again. So awesome stuff. All right, settings. Actually, I should just note here. It's saying that we're going to put this. There's a little picture, so we're going to have one instance, and it's going to be in one availability zone. Okay. All right. I need to give this thing a name, so I'm going to call it. So now we're getting into the good stuff. Paradise Donut Company. And we need to put in a password, and I'm going to select self-managed password, and I'm going to use this secret super special password, password one, and then I'm going to say password one, and it tells me very weak. It's like a computer's way of saying, "Do you even lift, bro?" And yeah, so I see what you're saying. You're trying to shame me there, but I know it's a weak password, but I'm not going to use it for very long, and it's easier to write in the short term. Okay, so I do that. And now I need to choose an inexpensive database class. So this one is going to be fairly expensive, all things considered. So let's switch this. Oh, I got to change to this. So if I go to burstable classes, then it starts to allow me to use these really cheap instances like dbt3.micro. So that's what I'm going for. All right, so I'm good there. For storage, I don't need 200 gigabytes today. I'll just say like 20, and that's actually the least that it will allow me to do. Um, Under connectivity, I'm going to uh, I'm going to leave that alone. And under the VPC, this is where it's going to get interesting. Okay. I'm going to select, instead of using the default one, I'm going to, as part of this wizard, create a brand new VPC. And when I think about making applications, I like to that are going to rely on RDS. I like to create my RDS instance first because then it creates the VPC in which my RDS stuff is going to go into. And then it configures the VPC correctly for using the database. If I go the other way and I do my VPC first and then I select put my RDS into there, sometimes you don't know all of the settings you need to make RDS work right. And you can figure it out eventually, but it takes some time. So it's just easier to create a brand new from here and then put your EC2 instances in the same network that are going to be an application that are going to interact with this. All right. Now public access. Yes, I want to be able to connect to it externally. Um, and it says create a, let's see, we want to create a security group, and I'm going to call this security group database SG. And it doesn't really matter which availability zone I use, but I will just select one rather than letting it select for me. And then that's all the settings that I needed. So if I want to, I can see that I'm going to be connecting to this database via 3306. So all of the settings are here in this document as well. So I did public access, I gave it a name, and now I'm ready to hit create. And hopefully I didn't hurry too much. So at $15 a month, that should be just like 50 cents a day if I'm not running in a free account or something. So not too bad. So I'm going to click create database, and hopefully I didn't forget anything. And I'm going to pause the video because this could take, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. Uh, oh, well, first off, let's talk about this. It's going to offer you some add-ons, and you'll just pass. So right now it says creating, and it's going to go from creating to configuring enhanced monitoring to backing up, and then eventually it's going to say available. So I'm going to pause for a few minutes until it says available. So I go pause recording. All right, after 5 to 7 minutes, I kept hitting refresh and eventually available showed up. So the next thing I want to do here is click on this link and notice some of the things that show up here. As I go lower into the page, I see this thing that says endpoint. This is effectively the URL that I can use in a connection string within applications, so that the application knows where the database is. So this is the location of it, and then I need a username and a password. Other things of note here, there's a security group that has been created for this database. There is a new VPC name that has been created for it. And it is talking about multiple subnets. So the subnets are going to relate to the VPC has multiple subnets, although technically the way we set this up is it only put the database instance into one of those subnets. So my screen's a little squished because I divided this and squished my browser, but it's supposed to look more like that. Okay, so I say, what's the endpoint URL? What's your security group? And then I say, click on your security group. And here it is. And if I click on it, I can look at the inbound rules. And it says that it's allowing traffic from my home IP address right now. So by default, what it does is it says the only place in the whole world is your IP address, and only you can access this database. So even if you had my username and password and the URL right now, you can't use it because it's firewalled off to only allow me in. Um, all right. And I encourage you to go and look around your VPC and see what else is there. Let me click back a couple times. I don't know if I did anything else in there. I just hit cancel. I wanted you to know about it. So if you were to go into the VPC right now, um, you could explore and learn about things like how many IP, like what range did it assign to it, since we didn't tell it anything. What are the rules that are in the route table that it's using? Um, what, let's see, what else could we look at in there? What security groups are associated with it. I think just the one at this point, the one that got created, what subnets are part of it, and are they public or private? Well, they're going to be public. And so that means the route table is going to be configured correctly. And the looks like we got a sub. Oh, actually, I like the fact that it does this resource map. So it'll actually tell us the names of the services that were created. This is actually a good way to see everything. So we could click on any of these then, and it'll open it up in a new browser, and we'll see some things about it. Um, Note that this VPC ends in 373. So if I go over to subnets and make sure I hit refresh, then here's my list of subnets. If I come over here and I sort by VPC, now I'm able to see the three subnets that were created. And I'll give you a little trick question here. I said, in the subnet where your DB instance is currently located, which you have to deduce, how many IP addresses are available to assign to new instances? Let's learn about the subnets that were used. So these are the three subnets that were created as part of my 172 network. And as I scroll over here, it says all of these are slash 24. So if I go equals 32 minus 24, that means 8. So it gave each of these subnets 256 IP addresses possible. And these are how many are left. So as you answer this question, think about, why does this one have one less than the other ones? Could it, I feel like that show, Is It Cake? Is it because there's one additional EC2 instance running in here right now, even though it's a brand new network? I'll let you think about that. All right, so let's go ahead and create our database table now. It's going to interact with our RDS instance. So I have already downloaded and installed MySQL Workbench. If you have not done so, then you need to do that now. So this is what it looks like when you open it up. Looks roughly the same on a Mac as, or sorry, on a PC as well. And I did this earlier, so I'm going to delete this particular box. I'm going to click the plus sign, and in the connection name, I don't think that's going to matter much. I'll just follow along with what I say in here. So Paradise Donut Connection, so just some name that we can recognize. For the host name, the word name seems weird when it's actually referring to a URL. We need the URL or the slash IP address of the where the database is at. So, and we're doing all this because we want to put data in the database up there in the cloud. So let's go over here and again select Aurora RDS. There's my database instances. Click on that, and here is the endpoint, or in other words, the URL of my database. So I'll pop that in there. The only other thing I need to worry about is the username that I was using before was admin. When I was setting it up, you can look in the screenshots up above if you need to in this document. And then I'm going to click test connection. And because it didn't give me some error connecting message after a long pause, that means it did hit the instance and it's being challenged for the password right now. So I'm going to type in my super secret password that ends with the number 1, and I click OK, and it says, "Yay, you connected." And so jump for joy. Good things are about to happen. Okay, so I'm going to click OK, and there's my box that I can now click on to open up the database at any time. So I double click, and there we go. Because first thing I want you to do is make sure you're on schemas. If you are on Windows, I think they put the schemas box on the bottom potentially. Uh, and this is the first one that's there. In other words, the database on the database server. And we need to do another one. So fourth thing from the left is basically create a new database, or they're calling it a schema. So click create, and I am going to call it ice cream donuts. So imagine that we're going to make ice cream donut cakes, and this is going to store information about that. So there's the name of my database. I click apply, and there we go. Close. And now this database with its icon is available over on the left-hand side. The next thing I want to do is I want to expand that and right-click on tables and say create table. And I want to create a table of flavors of ice cream cakes. So I'll call this table flavor. And all right, I'll just be totally random here. I went to the Maroon 5 concert on Saturday, and Flava Flav was the like one of the opening guys to get the crowd hyped up. So I don't know. I just saw the word flavor, and I just thought it just reminded me of that. Okay, I mean, I can't believe he got paid for like 2 minutes worth of work and we never saw him the rest of the night. And I wondered what he got paid and if it was worth his time to fly out and be in a hotel and all that other stuff. But his green sweatpants and the clock around his neck looked nice. All right, so I'm going to create a column ID and another one called flavor name with these attributes. So let's change this to ID and it's primary key, not null, and auto increment is what I care about. And then the other thing I need is flavor name. And so I'll say flavor name, and it is going to be not null. And that's all that we need. I'll just leave it as variable number of characters up to 55. And with that, I can click the apply button. There we go. There's the syntax it's going to use. Done. Okay, so now we're ready to add some data in here. So I'm going to come over here to, I'm going to expand it, see this table, right click on it, and to add some data to it, I'll say select rows, limit 1000, and I can use this grid down here to add data. So I'm going to use these words. So I will do island chocolate and guava and passion fruit, blue coconut, passion fruit, double click, blue coconut, which sounds more like a slushy, and cotton candy, which also sounds like a slushy. All right, and so having done that, if I click, now notice because I did auto increment before, I didn't need to type in the ID. So I click apply and off it goes. And now they are numbered and we're good to go. So we don't need to interact with that anymore. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this. Won't be using that again, but I could if I wanted to. Let's go ahead and launch an EC2 instance. Okay, so note back here again where it says RDS, and I'm in the RDS dashboard, and I'm looking at the basically the instance that I set up. There's a VPC here that ends in 3373, and so I need to keep track of that for when I'm creating my EC2 instance. Um, and according to my diagram, I said I would put the EC2 instance in this same subnet as the RDS database instance. It doesn't really matter whether you put it in the same one or not. It's all going to work because the networking's set up appropriately here. But I think just deduction, I think it's in availability zone A in the East region to East 2. So I'll put them both in there. That's fine. I'll put them both in the same subnet so it matches what's in the diagram. All right, so with that, I'm gonna search for EC2 instance and click launch instance. And I need to give it a name and I will call it web server. I'll take the default Amazon Linux. I'll stick with t3.micro. I have a pre-existing key that I used. So You could skip creating, well, let me think about this. Yeah, you could skip creating a key. That would be fine. I'm going to use one since well, okay. I'm going to select one, but then I'm not going to use it after all, just because I can. So I could do the same commands, either using EC2 Instance Connect or with the key. I'll do EC2 Instance Connect because it's a little faster for me. Okay, so scrolling down a little bit, the network is the important part. So rather than just dropping it into the default network, I'm going to click Edit, and I'm going to choose this one that ends in 3373. Notice it didn't give me any like nice labels on it. Um, so I had to know the number. And it said, let's see, it's which subnet is it going to use? So we're going to, oh, here's another way of looking at it. Um, so in this subnet, there's 250 available IP addresses, 251 and 251. So I know where the uh, instance is already being used for the database because this is one less. So I'll just put them in the same database, or sorry, the same subnet. So we're good. For a security group, I'm going to create a new one that is going to live in my VPC. So when I delete the VPC, the security group will disappear as well. Web server security group is what I will call it. And I'm going to create an EC. Oh, so what needs to be around my web server? Well, I want to give SSH access to it, and I'll say from everywhere. That way I can use EC2 Instance Connect. If I wanted to be more secure, I could switch this to just my IP, and then I would be forced to use the security key. The other thing I want to do is, um, I'm going to be not putting like Apache or an Nginx on here for development. I'm going to be putting uh, Node, which is going to run on port 3000 by default. So I'm going to use it like a website um, without a front end reverse proxy on it. So I'll just directly access it on port 3000. So I clicked add security group. I plan on reaching this on port 3000 and it's a web server, so everybody is allowed to visit it. And with that, we're done. So I'm going to go to the bottom and click launch. All right, it says it has launched. So I clicked on that link and I just want to note what my public IP address is because I will need that information later on. Okay, now I want to start running like writing some code and putting it on here. So the first thing I'll do is I'll click connect and I'll use EC2 Instance Connect. And I apologize, the font gets even smaller when I use this. But sudo yum update. Seems like most of the time when I do this, it says it's up to date but from time to time, there are updates that need to be applied. So I think just whatever version of the AMI, the image that we're looking at, sometimes it's already patched and sometimes it's not. What? A newer version of Amazon Linux is available. How could that be? Huh. Thought I picked the default one in the dropdown. Oh well, I won't worry about that right now. Well, actually, I will worry about that just because I'm curious. So, all right, so just like a random thing, coming over here, launch instance. Here's the drop down. So is that one supposed to be the newer one? Oh, there was a 6.1. Now there's a 6.12. Ooh. All right, who cares? All right. Anyway, we're in here. We did our update, and there's a little tutorial that you can follow if you want to do that link. And here are the key commands that I have taken from that tutorial. When I just professional advice here, whenever I need to do something like install Django or Node on Amazon Linux 2023, I put that exact query into the web and it will come back with a website where it shows you how to do exactly that on that platform. If you needed it for Ubuntu, it'll be a different tutorial. If you needed it for another flavor of Linux, it's probably another tutorial. It just so happens that AWS keeps tutorials active and updated, and they change regularly for some of the common platforms that you're going to install, like Python with Django on Amazon Linux or Node on Amazon Linux. So those tutorials always change, but they usually have them embedded on the AWS website under documentation. So I just did the command to whoever that was, pull down and run the install script for Node, and then I'm supposed to activate the Node version manager. And now we're going to install, well, I guess anyway, we didn't technically install it yet, but Node version management, manager, install the long, I think it's like long-term support. I think that's what that means. Anyway, just basically install the latest one, which is Node 22.21.0, and it'll be something else in a couple days from now, because that's how this works. Okay, so now it is successfully installed, which is a great thing. Let's go ahead and start writing some code and create an application. So I typed pwd and I check my current directory, my present working directory, and I'm in the EC2 user folder within home. And I'm going to create a folder for writing my application. Make dir ice cream donuts, and then I'll change my working directory to ice cream donuts. I did pwd. I can see I'm now working in that folder. And now I will scaffold an application for Node by typing npm init. And I'm going to accept all of the defaults for this and type yes. Now I'm going to install several things. Since this is going to be a website, I want to install Express as my website framework. After that, I'm going to do install connects as a database connection library. And then I'm going to type in npm install MySQL for the specific database that I plan on talking to. And now I'm going to type in, let me just type ls for a second. So there's no index.js like main running website file yet, so I'll go ahead and create that. Nano index.js, and I'm going to copy and paste this text right here. So this is like the most minimal way of writing a web page in Node. It basically just says to the response object, send some text. Well, this one's actually a little complicated because, oops, it actually connects. We're gonna connect to the database. Um, and then we're going, so using the connects library, we're going to connect to that database and select everything from it, and then just take the default response from the library and effectively do, um, uh, so it comes back in JSON format when we, sorry, query the database. Um, and then I'm just going to write that to the console as well as do the response.send to send it to the web browser. So same thing, it's going to go to both places. But before we can do that, we have to make sure that A, you're using the right password. And so use whatever username and password you used for your database, and then use the most current endpoint. So let's find the endpoint for my RDS instance. And here it is. I will copy, come over here to this window, and I will, oops. Paste. I'm good to go. So Control O, Control X, oops, Control X. Okay, Okay, control, try that again. Control O, return, Control X. Okay, now I'm done. Now I can go ahead and start the web server. So I type node index.js, and the fact that it's doing nothing means that it's running. And now I want to try visiting my web page. So think about this. I've got an EC2 instance, and this is its IP address. It just started an application on port 3000. I want to make sure I don't put HTTPS in this. So I'll do :3123, and I hit return, and it's not immediately returning anything. And in just a second, it's actually going to fail. So, ooh, this isn't working. And I come back here and I see an error. And if I look at the message here, it says connect timeout. Now, whenever you see like a connection timeout thing, you're like, oh, I know that my code tried to talk to a server and it couldn't reach it. So you start thinking, okay, what is it that I probably did that made it so I couldn't reach it? Well, if you recall, let's think about two security groups that we've created. One security group was to allow and protect our EC2 instance to get port 3000 traffic over it. So we believe that 3000 traffic is able to make it to there. But then, if we recall the RDS instance that we created, it actually had a security group for it. And the security group said, let in port 3306 traffic and only allow it from the IP address that you were setting it up with, which was my personal home address. So then, therefore, when my EC2 instance with my web server on it tries to talk to that, it doesn't have a rule that allows it. The database is saying, hey, that's not that IP address that I was told that I could listen on. There's two ways we can solve this. One is we could say, this is the private IP address of my EC2 instance. So I could add a security group rule that says allow traffic from that. That is the most straightforward way to do it. However, if I had a cluster of EC2 instances, then I'd have to put in every single IP address into that firewall rule that's protecting the database, and that would be a little bit cumbersome. There's like a weird, tricky way that it's just different, but once you learn it, it works. Uh, this EC2 instance is protected by a security group. The security group is called Web Server SG. So think of it as like a server with a fence around it that protects it. And so you might think about this as, and here's a way of looking at it. Anything within that fence is probably a protected resource. So let me show you why that's an interesting way to look at it. So if I now go to, let's see, if I go down here to security groups and I look for database SG, so remember that guy? Let's go ahead and click on that and click on the inbound rules and click edit. So remember this rule, this is my personal address, and we need to allow traffic to this database from the EC2 instance. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to say, as the one above, I'm going to say allow in MySQL traffic, and it hard codes in there. That's 3306. Where am I going to let it from? Let the traffic come from? Well, I could just physically type in, like I said, the IP address of that other instance. But notice down here under security groups, it says you can allow traffic originating from a security group, which is like a weird way of looking at it. So what this is saying is that whether it's one or 1,000 different instances, if they're coming from that security group, I trust any traffic coming from an EC2 instance protected by that security group, uh, which sounds logical in some ways, but it's a little weird to think about. So that's what I'm going to do. I know my EC2 instance is in that security group. So I'll say trust traffic on 3306 coming from something that's protected by that security group. And I hit save. And now just double check for my database SG. It now accepts traffic either from my home IP address or from within a particular security group. All right, so let's go back to this thing. Now I'm back at this command line, and so that means my node program has crashed. So I click up, it's running again. I come over here and I'm going to click reload and look at that. It worked. So it basically just took the direct database response from the query, which was, I don't know, kind of, it's a bunch of JSON text surrounded by a bracket. Like it's an array with one thing in it. Anyway, we got our data. If you can parse code, you can parse this and turn it into something pretty on a page. But it worked. That's the important part. Okay, so now we're working. We're super happy. Yay. Okay, now what I say here is everything from here on out is optional. I think you're pretty much done with this tutorial if you want. But, little caveat there, if you're doing a project for my class, you are going to need to know how to do these subsequent things. So, um, all right, let's go ahead and just basically play with that JSON text that came back and make things display prettier. So first thing I'm going to do is hit Control C and click and do nano that. And I'm going to go down to the bottom part. Instead of just doing response.send result, I'm going to make this variable, and I'm going to put a header on there, and then I'm going to append to that variable just the text that I'm getting out of the loop. So result I dot flavor name. I could do result I dot ID as well. So I'm just reading the columns that are coming back that are in the JSON. So I'm going to grab this, all this stuff right there, come over here, and I'm going to delete all this stuff down here. I actually am more comfortable using VI and Vim. I don't like using this as much, but I do it for the people. I can do all kinds of cool things very quickly just using the other editor, but doing this for you, my friends. All right, so I'm going to run this again, and I hit reload, and now I have some HTML on the page and a list of things. If I do view source, you can see what my code generated. So it generated something nice this time. All right, and so let's go ahead and do this one more time. So usually we don't, let me hit Control C. Usually we don't just, here, I'll look at the contents of that file right there. Usually we don't just have a web application that prints out some text directly to the screen, but we do this early on for testing to make sure that everything's working. Usually we use a web framework, and we use things called templates where we have like these HTML pages and then we intersperse variables to that are the dynamic things that we pull back from a database usually. So this is kind of a clunky way of writing web pages, if you will. So let's go ahead and install EJS, which is a templating engine that we can use with Node. So I need to say npm install EJS, and in order to use this, we need to have a directory called views, mkdir views, and I'll type ls. I got my views folder there. Um, Let me open up, I'll hit up a couple times and I will edit index.js. And this is now like, and anyway, it's an entry point for my program. I need to add in this thing right here that lets the program know that we're using a templating engine or a view engine. So view engine, and the one we're going to use is EJS. Okay, so I always forget that part to add that. And then I wonder, why did my program just break? So I don't know how to quickly do a multi-line erase, but I do know how to do that with VI. So that's why this drives me crazy. Um, but let's just think about nice things like donuts. And one of my favorites being apple fritters. And if you're in Utah, you can go to the Red Barn and get giant ones. I think they're down there in Payson or Santaquin, actually. Okay, so here's this. And what this does is it grabs the data and then it sends the data to a view page called index and it passes the data from the database as a variable called a donut list. So I do Control O, Control X, and then I need to go into the views folder, CD views, and there's nothing in there. So I do nano index.ejs, and I need to copy this in here. So here's a mixture of HTML. And in the middle of the HTML, you put in this EJS specific syntax, which allows us to loop through and print some text out to the page. So Control U, Control X, and I'm going to change back up a directory. So I'm right here where index is, and I will restart the that particular page. So I start my node index.js, I hit reload, and I've now used this views page. And we're in good shape. We're effectively done. So normally we wouldn't run on port 3000. Normally we could put something like a load balancer in the front and a redirect to lots of different EC2 instances on port 3000, or we could do on this server, we could put a regular web server like Apache or Nginx and have it go to this. But this gives you some of the basics if you do tutorials on EJS and well, EJS in particular. There's stuff all over the web, probably on W3 Schools. You could make something really pretty. And if I scroll back up to the top again really quick, what we've effectively done is this. We created an RDS instance, which is managed by AWS. If it crashes, if it goes down, it's backed up, it recovers, it just comes back to life, which is fantastic. And then we created a separate EC2 instance, which can interact with that. And we set up the firewall rules that keep this thing relatively safe. All right, so now we can go ahead and destroy everything, which makes people sad. They're like, but I worked so hard to make that. All right, so let's go and first come over. I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And I'm going to go over here to my, let's find my EC2 instance. Instances, here it is. Actions, oops, no, instance state. Don't do stop, do terminate. All right. And you have to wait like 30 to 60 seconds or more. And once that's done, well, anyway, it's going to take a little while. Let's go over to RDS and get rid of our database. Oh, yeah. So Amazon. So basically what I was thinking was after we kill EC2, we can't get rid of the VPC until the EC2 instance is totally shut down, which takes a minute or two. But the bigger issue is the database. We go to the database. I'm about to sneeze. Sorry. If I select it and do actions delete, ooh, it says, do you want to create a final snapshot? Let me just take a little screenshot of this. Um, I do not want to create a snapshot and I don't want to retain backups. Let me just take a little screenshot of this so I can paste it into the tutorial. And I want to acknowledge what I'm doing. And I'm going to type in delete me. All right, one more time. Gonna take, oops. Okay, one more. Okay, screenshot. Okay, and I'm going to click delete. Awesome. Because otherwise, if I had allowed some of those other things like retain backups and stuff, then it's going to charge me money in storage on their server. Now, the good news is if I ever wanted to get that thing back, I could create a new RDS instance and say recover from this backup that I have, but I don't need any of that. So it's gone. Now, the problem is that this is going to take about 10 minutes. So while that's happening, I'll update my tutorial for a little bit and then I will come back and delete the VPC. But that's going to take a minute. Alrighty, after about 10 minutes of waiting, there is nothing left there. So now I can go and delete the VPC that was created. So I click VPC, click on my VPCs, and here was the one that was created specifically for the RDS instance that we created. So if I click that and I say actions, delete, it says when I do this, I'm going to get rid of an internet gateway and two security groups and two subnets. And technically there's three subnets. I don't know why they don't list it. Um, but yeah, also the internet gateway. So they didn't quite capture everything they were deleting, but you do that. And we are done. That's it. Um, Got a little joke there at the end saying that there's a lot to know just even to set up a database appropriately and then delete it. That's tech for you. So, all right, this has been a blast. I think it's fun to know how to develop applications in the cloud and to do it appropriately, and you learn some tools that will allow you to do it a little bit more professionally than going click, click, click. You probably understand a little bit more if you're in my course about networks and stuff now. So you're getting a little bit more control over your environment. All right, have a fantastic day. See you soon.